If everyone to take their seats, please. The chair will call to order tonight's regular meeting of the CUSD 201 Board of Education, January 9th, 2018. Roll call, please.
Ms. Ambrose. Here. Mr. Armstrong.
Here.
Mrs. Charlton.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Price.
Here.
Mr. Strohmeyer.
Here.
Ms. Wilson.
Here.
Thank you.
If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the December 12th, 2017 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. The chair will enter a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session of the December 12th, 2017 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Public comments. I have one card here from Carrie O'Connor. Did you want to come on up here?
Good evening, esteemed members of the school board. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Carrie O'Connor. My family has lived in Westmont since 2010 in the O'Connor Glen neighborhood, and before that we lived in Black Hawk Heights for 4 years. I'm proud to say that I'm the treasurer of the Westmont Public Library Board of Trustees, as well as the J.T. Manning PTO, a basketball coach at the YMCA, a math club volunteer at the junior high, and the chief of my daughter's Indian Princesses tribe. I don't mention this to brag, but rather to establish my bona fides as someone who is heavily invested in and very proud of this community. While I have the floor, I'd like to first thank the members of this board for your own volunteer service, as well as to give a shout out to Principal Peter Zach at Manning School and Principal Jonak at the junior high. In my admittedly brief dealings with them, they've both proven themselves to be very capable, accommodating, and friendly people. Unfortunately, the primary reason I come before you tonight is to relate an unpleasant experience I had recently at Westmont High School. My wife and I were excited to finally get a chance to witness the Sentinels basketball team in action over the holiday break at the Christmas Classic tournament that we co-hosted and that the Sentinels ultimately went on to place third at. I've been hearing for a while how good this team is, and as a coach and father of a child who plays on 3 different basketball teams, I was eager to watch them in action. I'm sorry to say, though, that the experience was ruined for us by the consistently bad behavior of a small but very vocal portion of the Westmont crowd. One person in particular spent the entirety of the first 2 games loudly abusing the referees for almost every call against our team. Neither my wife nor I attended these games with a desire to get into a verbal altercation with another person, so we bit our lips. However, I believe that the fact that this person was tacitly given permission to continue unchecked led to a downward spiral in the general crowd etiquette and emboldened others to verbally abuse the officials. It came to a head on the second night when a technical foul was called on a Sentinel player who was ultimately ejected from the game. At this point, the crowd turned into an ugly lynch mob, with several grown men and women essentially screaming for the referees' heads. It was an embarrassment. By the third game, my wife and I decided to sit on the opposite side of the gym, where we inadvertently sat in front of the opposing team's loudest and most belligerent fan. We couldn't have cared less, though, because he wasn't representing our community. In summary, I don't necessarily feel that bad crowd behavior needs to be aggressively policed by the school. That's not what I'm suggesting. Rather, I strongly encourage anyone attending a Westmont sporting event to do so in the spirit of positive support for the home team, respect for the opposing team and officials, and to remember that their behavior, good and bad, is a direct reflection on our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Much.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? All right, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Number 1, personnel recommendations, employment of licensed staff, Dennis Cox Jr., .1 FTE physical education teacher, Westmont High School. Employment of support staff, Sarah Perez, 1.0 FTE teacher assistant, Westmont High School. Stipend positions, Andrea Collier, choreographer, spring play, Westmont High School. 2, approval of student tour requests. 3, approval of board travel expenses. 4, approval of additional December 2017 expenditure report. And 5, approval of January 2018 expenditure report.
So moved. Second?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Stromeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, the next item is information and discussion, and we first start with the crisis plan report.
Kevin Weck, who's our Dean of Students at the high school, one of the other hats he wears, he coordinates the crisis planning for the district, and so he's going to give a brief overview to the board this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here tonight. I will just be giving a brief overview, as Mr. Carey said, of our critical incident process that we do every year. What that entails, we do have a committee that gets together twice, once in June and then once in August. The June meeting that we have, that's really kind of a reflection of the past school year's critical incident drills. And then we start to discuss what changes do we want to make for the following school year involving all of our drills. The August meeting then is based on the dates and to finalize any of the changes that we want to make for our district's policies and procedures with our critical incident drills. Some of the participants that are included, the Westmont Police Department joins us, the Westmont Fire Department joins us, and then we have all of the building the principals from each building join us as well, and then I represent the Westmont High School. And then we have district office join us as well. Here are some of the critical incident drills that are required by the DuPage ROE. We have 3 fire drills. One requires a participation of the fire department. We also have the bus evacuation drill, a severe weather drill, and then 1 supervised law enforcement drill. That's kind of our armed intruder drill, and that must specifically address a school shooting incident. And we typically do that the first week or so of October. Additional drills that we do conduct, we do have a school lockdown drill that can be a hard lockdown or a soft lockdown. We also have a bomb threat drill and then a missing child drill. Documentation is key for some of this because we do have to turn this into district office and then also with the DuPage ROE. We have agendas that are developed and shared for both the annual meetings in the summer. Minutes are taken for both meetings and then shared with the district office. And then each building administrator is responsible for sharing drill procedures with their faculty. And they can do that with a staff meeting. They can also do that through whether it's a building meeting or meeting individually with their teachers. There is a district form for each drill that must be submitted to the district office following each drill. And there are ROE forms that must be completed with the supervised drill. That's where we have the police department sign off and the Westmont Fire Department as well sign off for those required drills. And then all documentation must be submitted to the DuPage ROE by May 1st in order to be in compliance. Does anybody have any questions on our critical incident drills?
I just have one quick one. I'm assuming that all of these drills are done at each individual building?
Yes, yes. So that's, when we talk about that at our meetings during the summer, we have the building principals there and we discuss how things went and then if we want to make any changes, and then we have to all come together and agree on what changes we're going to make from a district standpoint. Just to give you an example, our armed intruder drill is a little different at the elementary building as compared to the high school, just based on the student population.
That was going to be what I
Yeah.
had said, especially for new parents, maybe to the district, that it is handled differently at the elementary level.
Yeah, there's some different language and procedures that the police department and the elementary building principals agreed upon that would probably be better fit for our younger population.
And I do know that that this is an overview because we don't
Discuss specifics.
discuss specifics
Can't go into too
about
much
that
detail.
because that's, I just wanted people to know that that's done on purpose. And
Right.
it's done for the safety of the students.
And for
that.
their security, and that's just best practices for us.
But I do have a question, and I think I
Sure.
know the answer to. Can I assume that these are going, that they are running smoother with the changes that were done at the buildings? Like
Oh, yes,
especially-
absolutely.
Okay.
With the renovations that have happened,
Right.
Things such as our hard lockdown and our armed intruder drill, it's much safer and more secure because we do have the enclosed classrooms And, just, we have the exits that are, we do have additional exits towards my office as well, at
Yeah.
least at the high school level. So yeah, because of the renovations, we have had a better efficiency in terms of students getting out of the building and getting to a secure location.
Good. I just wanted to just ask that question as
Yeah.
long as we're talking about the
They're fantastic.
other facilities. Okay, that's all I had. Anyone else?
Anybody else? All right, everybody have a wonderful
Thank you.
evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is presentation of monthly financial statements.
All right, tonight we have the November financial statements. During the month of November, the district received $165,000 from the state. $120,000 of that was for current year revenues, and $23,000 was for fiscal year 17 payments. There's $29,000 of fiscal year 17 payments still vouchered, but the district has not received yet. And then $211,000 of fiscal year 18 payments that have been vouchered but not sent to the district. We also received another installment of the 2016 tax levy in the amount of $316,000. Total property taxes collected to date are $22.7 million, which is a 98.65% collection rate. And that compares to 98.24 and 98.24 for the prior two fiscal years. So we're right on target. In our ed and tort funds, our revenues are slightly higher than the prior year averages this month. And that's, again, a result of receiving the FY17 payments the last quarter in this fiscal year. Again, we received $165,000 in the ed fund this month. And there is $28,000 of FY17 and $89,000 of fiscal year 18 payments that haven't been released to the district yet. In the O&M fund, our revenues are lower than the prior year averages. And this, we rent some classroom space to SACID, and it just depends which month they send the revenue. So November or December, it kind of fluctuates from year to year. So last year we received that revenue in November, and this year we didn't. We received it in December, so that just changed the average slightly. Transportation fund, the average is higher again than the prior year, and that's again because of receiving fiscal year 17 payments late. We received them in this year, and there's $123,000 of payments that have been vouchered but not sent to the district yet for the first quarter of fiscal year 18. And on expenditures in our ed and tort funds, they're comparable to the prior year. In our O&M fund, we were 34% spent to date this year. Last year it was 31.59. So again, we're in the ballpark with prior years. And then the transportation fund fluctuates year to year. We still hadn't received the special ed transportation invoices. We did pay those a large chunk in January, so you'll see that starting to turn around. And then the fund balances are attached. The investments are also attached. We have $20 million invested at the end of November, and you will start to see those balances decline over the next several months as because we've received the majority of our tax money, and then we'll have a little bit of revenue coming in still from the state, but you'll start seeing those balances decline as we need that money to pay bills until the next round of taxes come in. And then the student activity accounts are there, and also the lunch report. So does anybody have questions?
Well, I don't have a specific question on this, except I have a question general, and if we don't have the answer to it tonight, that's fine. So I read this afternoon that Governor Rauner was thinking of vetoing the education bill.
Yes.
So I was just wondering if we have any information on that, and if it impacts us, if you know. If you don't?
It will most likely impact us, but we don't have any information at this point in time, so.
Once the
Yeah.
legislators get back in session, they can either override the governor's veto, which then monies will flow to school districts, or they could if they don't take any action, then it dies, and then we're kind of back to square one. It doesn't change the evidence-based funding model, but it's the funding mechanisms for the schools. And so those first quarter payments that are still, we haven't still received yet, they'll still be in limbo until they get
Yeah.
that figured out.
Okay, so that's how that's impacted. So we have some money, but that
We are
faucets could stop.
We're receiving federal grant funding right now, but not our state grant funding.
So I just bring that up because, nothing's done until it's done. And so I was sad to see that this afternoon, and I don't know where it's gonna go, but it was unfortunate, so. Okay, anyone else? All right. Then the next item on the agenda is budget staffing timeline.
I've shared with the board the process, the timeline Kim and I will be using in developing the budget and determining staffing for the next school year. It's hard to believe. We just got back from break and we're already in that planning mode for 2018-19. And so the board can see we have an admin meeting on Thursday, and so the timeline will be shared with the admin team, and we'll review the process with the admin team. And then periodically, you can see, for instance, line number 8, where the board input on the tentative budget, board admin team, those dates correspond with board meetings. So it's not that we have to set up an additional meeting date, but rather that will be part of our discussion in which we'll be able to share at that time some of the thinking as we're looking at potential revenues, expenditures, so the thinking we're using, and the board can has some input into that as well as some of the projects we're looking at for next year as well, and the board will have input with that. The Finance Committee meeting, that's line number 10. That's tentatively scheduled for March 12th. That's about when we had it last year, but obviously we'll coordinate that with board members who are part of the Finance Committee, so that date could flex a little bit depending upon people's schedules, but we kind of put that in as a placeholder. And the Finance Committee, again, has an opportunity to kind of review what we're thinking in terms of staffing and our budget recommendations. And then the plan then is March 20th. That's when the board would take action on staffing recommendations. So that's renewing non-tenure staff, granting tenure for those teachers who meet the criteria for tenure, and then if there's a need to release any teachers, the board would take action on that as well. And then from there, it's kind of refining the budget until Kim presents the tentative budget for the board, which occurs in June. And then the budget goes on display, and then we still have to set our board meeting calendar for the upcoming year. Then we'll determine what dates the budget will be approved by the board, and then ultimately has to be filed with the county by October 31st. Is there any questions on that?
No, thank you, no. All right, the next item on the agenda is board member resignation, and Matt wanted to speak.
Okay, cool, thank you. I have a few words for all you people. Tonight will be my last night serving on the board of directors for CUSD 201. Serving the Westmont community in this measure was a journey that I didn't expect to take, but it's been a privilege that I will be forever grateful to have been given the opportunity to participate in. I joined this board not because I want to press for change, but because I want to help maintain the positive momentum that this district had and still has. There are so many amazing changes that have taken place here in such a short amount of time. And things in this district were really troubling not all that long ago. Yet somehow it's already become such a distant memory that a lot of the new parents to the district don't have the same frame of reference from which to see how far we've come, which is a shame because it really is pretty exciting. Much of this was in motion before I joined, so while it has been an honor to be a part of it, I really can't take that much credit. I'm the kind of person who believes that if you aren't willing to be a constructive part of the solution, you have no right to complain, and this has led me to be a somewhat active member in some parts of the community. However, I'm also the kind of person who believes that when you commit to something, you need to do it right. So as my career and my volunteer activities started to stretch me too thin, I realized that the family time I will never get back was slipping away, and that I needed to devote much more time to my family than I have been. It's not fair to myself, the community, or to the people I serve with to not make every effort to live up to the expectations of this position, and I cannot do that at this time. So I need to get out of the way and create an opportunity for someone else with the time and energy this job deserves to have a chance to experience this honor. Well, there have been many frustrations and absolutely unnecessary challenges from some angles. I want to note that at all times it has been a pleasure to work with the people here, and with Mary Kay Caprelli and Shannon Hancock, who were on the board when I started. I have the utmost respect for this team and for their commitment to our community and to our children. Each member here brings something different to the table, and the synergy that they have enables many of the changes that have brought this district to greatness out of mere mediocrity. There are a lot of critics in the community who may want to pick out the flaws in individuals, but I want to point out that every person at this table invests the time and energy into a cause that their heart is committed to, and they do it without pay, contrary to what some people seem to think. I want to thank them all for welcoming to the board, enabling me to be a part of it, and for everything that they do for our community. I cannot express enough the gratitude that I feel for being able to work with Kevin Carey and for the amazing staff who execute everything that's put in place, especially Kim and Rima, with whom I have the pleasure of sitting here on so many long nights, Jack Balderman and John Jonak, the principals with whom I spend the most time, and Linda Clowitter, who isn't necessarily the most visible person on the team, but who impacts so many lives so greatly. Not to mention Tim, Lindsay, and Kevin Weck, and I don't care what you say, Gary, I think Kevin's beard looks pretty good. These people care about the kids in our schools more than I thought was possible. Their passion is sincere, and it's absolutely awe-inspiring. I feel personally that I am a better person just for having gotten to know these people, and my respect for them is overwhelming. I am very sad to be stepping down. I want to thank this community from the bottom of my heart for the opportunity I've been given, and I hope that someday I may get this opportunity again. But for now, I have to direct my attention more acutely on my family. I take great comfort in leaving a board that is very high functioning and which will continue to maintain the positive momentum that they have going. And I want to ask all of you in the community to remember that these people are volunteers and that they're tasked with a very big and a very important job. When you get a chance, please thank them. And when things aren't going as you think they should, please approach them with patience, open mind, and a constructive attitude. We're all working towards the same thing. Thank you all.
Matt, you will be missed. Thank you very much. I respect your decision, and we will vote on that in a minute. But I just wanted to say, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for your time and commitment through this time that you've been with us. I very much appreciate that.
Thank you.
So, I don't know if anyone else.
Well, Matt, you've always been a very solid voice of reason. I've appreciated that, and I thank you much for the comments you made pertaining to the whole board in general. I think a lot of people don't always keep that in mind about our board. It's been a pleasure serving with you, and I wish you all the best. I hope everything goes well with your family and you're able to spend that needed time, for that priority.
Thank you.
Just thanks for everything you've done, Matt. You've been a huge asset to the board, but I'm still going to vote no in a minute.
Yeah, I didn't think that was an option, but, All right, the chair will entertain a motion to accept the resignation of school board member Matt Johnson, effective January 9th, 2018, as presented.
So moved.
Wait, can he do that? All right, did we?
Second.
And roll call, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mr. Stormeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
No?
Mrs. Charlton?
Reluctantly, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will follow the process that we followed just a couple of months ago. So Kevin, Carrie, and I will work together, and then we will start posting the process and how this will work. And we do have a little bit of a tight time frame to fill the position, but information will start to go out tomorrow or the next day. So, thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Okay, superintendent's report?
A couple items in my report. One is, I believe we did this last winter as well, but just to share information with our parents in our community about when we have severe weather warnings and inclement weather, right away, people start to speculate whether or not we're going to have school. And it is, a process that we follow to make that determination. And going into it, I already know that if you make a decision to have school, there are some who think you should have canceled, and if you cancel, there are some people who think you should have been in session. So it's never a 100% popular decision. But typically, when we start receiving those warnings, as a district, we start tracking the weather. Myself and our Director of Building and Grounds, Mike Maros, he shares with me the information about the buildings, if we're able to keep parking lots open, those types of things, the conditions of our parking lots in our buildings. And then typically the superintendents in the area, we all have a conference call. And depending upon that forecast, if we're able to make that decision the night before, we know that's best for parents, because with working families, the sooner they get that information, the better for them. But in some cases, we have to wait until the following morning to see exactly what is occurring with the weather. But we're always on the phone at least early in the morning, and usually by 5 o'clock in the morning, we make a decision as to whether or not we are going to be having school that day, and then we begin communicating that to our community. And so when we do that with ParentLink, and so families, if you need to update cell phone numbers, if you need to update email addresses, if they could do that through their school offices, that's greatly appreciated. We do it on Facebook, we post it on our website, and then we contact the local news agencies and let them know that we're not in session. And if you Google Emergency Closing Center, that'll take you right to the site, and it'll pull up all the schools that are closed if necessary. There's also times with extreme cold that we need to sometimes close school. Sometimes that's a little less clear for families, but when you have students, especially young students, waiting on a bus stop, you do have to take into account the cold weather, extreme cold. And there is a difference between a wind chill advisory versus wind chill warning. Wind chill warning is the more severe warning that can be given. With the wind chill advisory, it seems like more times than not we'll still have school. There are occasions, but more times than not. But it's when it becomes a wind chill warning, that's when we really take it seriously, and then there's that strong possibility that we won't have school. If we do cancel school with the junior high and the high school, with athletic programs and practices and games, typically a decision is made later in the day if we're able to still have those. In the case if it's a competition, a game, we also have to contact the school that we're competing against, either traveling to or they're traveling to us, and sometimes that decision is made also with the other school. They may not be able to, either we may not be able to get to their site or they can't get to our site. But typically by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we make those decisions. And again, that's communicated, posted on our website, and so we encourage our families to look at our websites to see what the status is of those activities. But again, we always, the safety of our students is foremost, our students and staff, that's what is foremost in our minds. And so if we err, typically we err on the side of caution. But we know that it's not always easy for our families if we do have to close our schools. But we just want to share that information with our families so that they have that.
Can I add a couple things?
Sure.
Can I just reiterate that the board members are not the ones that make the decisions if the school's closed? Because we are, asked about that. But in all seriousness, I think what we found in the past couple of years is like the first time you do it, everybody's like, you better close the schools. And by the time you get to the 5th or 6th one, they're like, you better keep these schools
we need
open.
to stay open.
And I think it was a lesson, such as it is, to hear what was going on, like on the East Coast and stuff. There were some schools where kids went to school and they were sitting in rooms with no heat. and then there was a lot of uproar about that. So I have to say that I appreciate the process in place, that we make sure that if it's a safe environment for our kids. So I thank you. Appreciate that.
And then one other item, next Tuesday, January 16th is our next joint committee meeting. It'll be at 6:30, and we start in the West High School Commons. And again, this is our Finance Committee, our Facility Committee, Strategic Plan Committee, Climate Committee, and Public Relations. And it's an opportunity for the committees to meet, information is shared, we're able to touch base with the other committees. And again, this is open to any community members. And even if you weren't able to attend a prior meeting, you're still welcome to attend this meeting. So again, that's next Tuesday, January 16th at 6:30 p.m. in the high school commons.
Could I ask if you could send out another email to the whole district and everybody in case they weren't able to make the first one? I know everyone's sitting home watching the board meeting, but in case someone didn't hear that either, so thank you. Okay, did you have?
That's it.
All right. Are there any board reports?
Well, I guess I just mentioned, just occurred to me with what Mr. O'Connor was saying about how to behave ourselves when we're out in the community. It's a shame that you're at a sporting event and, you know, one or two voices have to create an ugly atmosphere. And really, parents and students alike. I mean, it's very easy to be upset with a bad call on the basketball court, but remember, you're in a room full of your peers and parents, and you know, respect yourself and respect those around you. I think it's important to know that. It's a little troubling when a community member comes and speaks before it's like that. So maybe we even need to look into it, and maybe if who's ever there, Jack Balderman, Kevin Weck, or maybe the coach of the team, go over and talk to this person, whoever it is. So.
You know, Gary, I'll follow up. I agree. It is troubling to hear that, and I guess in some ways I would like to find out what we can do, because we have standards for our students.
Correct.
And, you know, especially
We don't know it wasn't a student.
we don't know anything. I mean,
Right.
I'm
We have
not-
standards for the room, and everybody in the room should be behaving to those standards.
Right. And especially, not especially, but you'd think it would even be better at our own facility. So, I mean, I know Park District programs have things where you say that there's an expectation, and so I guess, would you talk to whoever needs to be talked to and see if we can?
And we can follow up with it.
As somebody who is very involved in sports, I know sometimes you get really, really, really involved, but I think setting an example for everybody, especially parents. So, okay, any other board reports? All right, are there any other public comments? Then future meetings and events. There will be no school on January 15, 2018 for Martin Luther King Day, and the next school board meeting will be January 23rd. That meeting will be at 6:30, and it will be at the Westmont High School Auditorium, because that is our student recognition meeting. The chair will entertain a motion to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing personnel issues, student discipline, probable litigation, and the superintendent's evaluation instrument.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Price? Yes. Mr. Strohmeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Ambrose?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
And there will not be a vote after closed.